Hey everybody, today we are going to dive into some Lorcana gameplay. We're going to take a look at one of the decks that I've been tinkering with and then test it out, play it on Pixelborn, which is the platform that I use to play Lorcana because I don't have a local card shop that I'm going to just yet, but hopefully can change that in the future. Today, the deck we're going to be looking at is Amber and Emerald, and it is going to be in the style of an aggressive aggro deck. Now, I know we have not done a deck building video yet, but as a precursor to that, a little preview, there are typically, and we're oversimplifying things here, 3 styles of deck. Style 1 is aggro or aggressive. This means your goal is to very early on in the game overpower and overwhelm your opponents, so that way you can win the game, whatever that game may be it Magic the Gathering, Lorcana, what have you. The second style of deck is mid-range. The goal for the mid-range deck is to counter all of that early game aggression and then get to the 4 to 6 ink range and really dominate that level of the game to hopefully overpower and overwhelm your opponent to win at that juncture. And the third type of deck, again, this is an overgeneralization, is control. And the goal of a control deck is through resource denial, long-term card advantage, permission, and frankly, inevitability to overwhelm your opponent through controlling what exists on the board or in the game in front of you for both your opponent and yourself. With that said, let's take a look at the deck we are going to be playing today. You will see the statistics for the deck breakdown here on screen. I am using Dreamborn.ink as well as Lorcana to house my deck builds. I'll be linking my Lorcana profile in the description down below, so that way if you would like to see this deck or import it into Pixelborn or try to build it yourself, you can do so. But just because I like how it's laid out, we're actually going to be looking at it here on Dreamborn.ink. Now, the first thing you're going to notice about this deck is that it dominates in terms of numbers of characters that you are playing. There are 54 characters that can be played or utilized for ink. In fact, if I look at the breakdown, there are only 14 cards in this deck that are uninkable and 46 cards that are inkable. So that's a really healthy ratio, meaning that you should very rarely have cards in your hand that can't be used for ink in the early game to help you sort of press the advantage against your opponent. Because that's frankly where this deck shines. If you look at the cost breakdown of this deck, there are very few cards in the 6+ cost range of ink, meaning that you're trying to dominate from turns 1 through 5 and hopefully overwhelm your opponents in the early game, so that way they have to waste resources or try to work against you in that early game, and ultimately you can just press your advantage. Taking a look specifically at the cards that we have, let's start with songs because there are only 6 of them. The first song is Mother Knows Best. This allows you to return an annoying character on the opponent's side of the field back to their hand, freeing up any threat of their action against you. And the second is Be Our Guest. This one is simple. We just have Be Our Guest because we always want to have characters in our hands to play, and Be Our Guest allows us to find those characters. This is a reliable song that helps you find targets to play and, again, overwhelm your opponents. As far as the character breakdown goes, we have 10 cards at the 1 cost range. That is Lilo making a wish. Frankly, one of the most powerful 1 cost cards in Amber and in the game. I think the only secondary card that I could think of would be Maleficent in Amethyst, who is also a 1 cost. And the reason is it is a 1 cost character card that when they quests for 2 lore. Incredibly powerful card. It is a card that must be dealt with. 2 is Stitch New Dog, just a really solid 1 cost card that allows you hopefully on a good draw to maybe shift into Stitch Rockstar down the road, but even still just a solid card. Duke of Wesselton. This is a solid 1 cost card. If I look at this 9 times out of 10, I'm likely going to be inking this card unless there's nothing else to play in my hand, but I think it's a solid backup to Stitch New Dog. Frankly, it's just 2 more copies of Stitch New Dog without the upside of being able to shift it into Stitch Rockstar down the road. As far as 2 cost cards, this is where we have a ton. We have 14 2 cost cards. You have LeFou Bumbler, a 2 cost 1/2 that quests for 2 lore. This is an upgraded Lilo. I think it's in here as a nice to play and an easy choice to ink if I need to, but if I'm trying to press my advantage, I'm probably playing LeFou. Simba, Protective Cub. This is the card that comes in to have the bodyguard ability, which allows you to protect the other characters in play. We'll hopefully be seeing that later in game. Flynn Rider, Charming Rogue, just an amazing 2 cost emerald card. Whenever this character is challenged, the opponent must discard a card. This allows you to, in the early game, press your opponent's resources, not on the table, but in their hand, which is just a really interesting and unique style of gameplay to help pressure your opponents. For our 3 cost cards, we have Cheshire Cat and Jasper. Jasper is a recent addition that I've added in here, and I'll get into why in just a moment. But Cheshire Cat is just a solid 3 cost emerald card. The fact that if this character is challenged, it can banish the character that banished it is incredibly powerful and makes your opponent have to think about what resources they're going to use to try to get rid of Cheshire Cat. Jasper, Common Crook is interesting because this has additional resource denial by telling your opponent that they can't quest any longer. You get to choose a character on your opponent's side of the board, and that character can't quest. So you are, again, through a 3-cost card that can also be inked, with a really powerful defense so it can stay on the field for a while, denying resources for your opponent. At 4 costs, this is when we get a little bit more weighty again. We have Hades, Lord of the Underworld, Rapunzel, Gifted with Healing, Hans, Scheming Prince, and Tinkerbell, Most Helpful. Hades, Lord of the Underworld is there for recurrence, and when I say that, I mean Hades' job and only job is to fetch cards that have disappeared and been banished into your discard pile. Put them back into your hand and allow you to play them again. So if you lose a valuable card and you want to get it back, Hades is the way to do that. Rapunzel is just one of the most powerful cards in Amber, period, because it allows you to heal one of your characters in play and also draw cards. Not to mention the fact that she has an incredibly high defense and can quest for 2 lore. It's just a solid card. Allowing you to heal your characters is a added bonus, and allowing you to draw more cards is just incredible, especially in a deck like this where you're likely not going to have a lot of cards in hand. As far as Hans, Scheming Prince goes, there's not much to say. This is just an incredibly powerful card that must be dealt with when he comes into play or after he quests. In all likelihood, you're likely getting at least 1 quest in with Hans, so you're going to be building 3 lore pretty regularly and consistently with him in play. Just a very solid card to have. Tinkerbell, Most Helpful. This is a fun card. In most Amber and Emerald decks I've seen that are more aggressive, you tend to see either 4 Tinkerbells or 4 Jaspers, and those are the cards that swap in that slot. And it's 1, because Tinkerbell has evasive, which means that she can't be challenged unless it's by another character with evasive, and 2, she can provide another character with evasive that turn, so you're effectively protecting another character outside of Tinkerbell when she comes into play, which is just a very powerful ability, especially if you're trying to overwhelm your opponent at that turn 4 mark. For me, I like lowering the curve or lowering the cost value of my deck overall on average, so I like having Jasper and a split of those cards. At our 5 cost slot, again, this is a little bit heavier with 12 cards. We have Maximus, Palace Horse. This card exists to protect your investment on board in play. If you have a bunch of cards on your board in play and you play Maximus Palace Horse, it comes in as a bodyguard, so it comes in exerted, meaning that all other characters on your opponent's side of the field must target Maximus first. It's just a super high value card to have out there to ensure that none of your other cards are eliminated from play and you're able to continue pressuring your opponent. Kuzco, Temperamental Emperor. Much like Hans at the 4 cost slot, Kuzco is a must deal with, and the added bonus is 1, he quests for 3 lore, 2, he has the ability Ward, meaning that opponents can't choose to target that character with anything other than a challenge. Yeah, we can't use targeted actions or songs on this character. You just have to simply challenge it in combat. Not to mention the fact that Kuzco has the ability No Touchy, so if he does end up getting banished by a challenge in play, he can banish the character that banished him. So a little bit of retaliatory effort on his way out as well. Just an overall very solid card. Hard to find any flaws here. At the 5 cost, you have Mad Hatter, Gracious Host. I love Mad Hatter because he allows you to draw cards when he is challenged, and because he has 4 defense, it's very rare that you're going to have him taken out through just being challenged once. So you'll likely have him challenged twice and be able to draw 2 cards from him coming into play. It also helps that he quests for 3 lore every time he quests, so you're going to want to be questing with him a lot. And in our 6 cost slot, which is very rare that this ever comes into play, but if it does, it's important to know the function of these cards. You have Stitch Rockstar. You're likely going to be trying to shift Stitch Rockstar on top of your Stitch New Dog at the 4 cost rather than paying the 6. If you're paying the 6 cost for Stitch, you're in a long game and things might be looking rough. Regardless of that, when Stitch comes into play, your focus is to try to get as much value out of adoring fans as possible, which reads if you play any character for 2 cost or less, you have them come in, you play them, you exert them, and are able to draw a card, which is just incredibly high value in a deck like this. But you don't want to lean into it too much, which is why we only have 2. And then of course, Genie on the job. Genie's job at his function, at his level, is to, if you do have to pay 6 costs for something, you want to bounce or return a card from play on your opponent's side of the board to their hand. And he's also has evasive, so it's going to be very hard to deal with him once he is on board, as he can't be targeted, much like Tinkerbell Most Helpful cannot be. Whew! And okay, that is a brief but not so brief breakdown of the deck, my understanding of the cards, their function, and how to play them. So let's actually pilot the deck, shall we? Okay, let's dive into playing this deck. We're going to be playing on Pixelborn, and we're going to hit it. We're going first. Okay, let's see what our opening hand looks like. Right now, I'm not loving what I'm seeing. At this point, I'm going to get rid of these 4 cards. Flynn and Hans are about the only 2 cards that I would keep here. There's an argument to keeping Duke of Wesselton, but I'd much rather have almost any other 1-cost card, like a Lilo, for example, than the Duke of Wesselton. And now we have 2 Lilos. That's a huge win for us. We're going to start with the Mad Hatter, play our first Lilo, and pass the turn. Now we will see what they play. Okay, so we know that they are steel, so we have to be aware of Fire the Cannons. We also have to be aware of, oh goodness, a great number of additional options here. We're going to put Tinkerbell into our Inkwell. We're going to quest with Lilo for 2. We are going to play Flynn Rider and force his decision-making down the road. If Stitch chooses to trade out Lilo, which is a very fair trade, he will then perish to Flynn Rider on the next turn. That's a-okay by me. Hopefully you can't hear my stomach growling. I need to have my lunch for the day. We're going to be inking a Simba for 2 ink. So this is the Amber and Steel combination. This is looking to me to be a bit like a Steel Song deck, which is a very popular deck in the meta and one that I do plan to actually go over here. So we will see what they play. Frankly, Steel Song is very strong against the Amber and Emerald aggressive decks because they're able to build up resources so very quickly. We're going to ink another Tinkerbell, quest with Flynn Rider, and play a Flynn and a Lilo, and pass the turn. He'll be able to trade out Flynn Rider and be forced to discard a card. I'm okay with pressing my advantage currently at this moment. For the 3 cost, he could also have the card Smash, which deals 3 damage to an opposing character. Typically in Steel Song decks, they run 3 to 4, and there it is. Going to be smashing Flynn Rider. They'll be able to save the questing here that he has with Prince Eric and Stitch. It would be a very interesting, if he chooses to quest with both of these, I think that's probably the best move by them because it would allow them to force me to choose, do I want to trade something out or not? I'm not going to. We're going to quest, ink a LeFou, and play Hans. Honestly, with Hans in play, they have to hold Prince Eric to trade out the Hans. Oh, I'm playing Ariel. This is a very smart play. I'm interested to see what song they get. It's very likely that they get Grab Your Swords. Yep, there it is. They might honestly just wait until next turn to play Grab Your Swords, and they, interestingly enough, choose not to. Interesting. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that decision, but I think that's fine. I'm okay questing, having no cards in hand. We go up to 8 next turn. They will be able to trade out with Grab Your Swords. Cusco will be able to get 1 quest in to go up to 16, and we're just going to have to play around. We're going to have to try to get cards in hand. Interesting. Okay. Yep, that's the right play. Prince Eric should trade Hans here. Or perhaps they have a second Grab Your Swords. Oh, they don't. Interesting. Okay. They might have a Tinkerbell, one of the big Tinkerbells coming in next turn then, which again would be a pretty devastating play. Okay, we have 3 here. We can play Simba. I wonder. We can play Simba as his bodyguard and quest with Cusco to go up to 16. They will be able to trade out Simba and we get to 16. Okay, let's see what the play here is. It would take both of these characters swinging into Simba, or challenging Simba, I should say. My Magic the Gathering coming out there. Challenging Simba to be able to trade this out. We're shifting in. Okay, we're shifting into Big Tinkerbell. Now we have this trade occurring and this trade occurring. It's interesting though, because with this trade, they would be sacrificing the Big Tinkerbell for Cusco, or sacrificing the Ariel to Cusco. That's the right route. That is the right route. The play here would be to trade Ariel out with Cusco. It'll be banished anyway. Cusco has the trigger action that allows me to banish Ariel. And now they have Tinkerbell remaining on the field. Our goal here is to play characters that allow us to stop questing, that allow us to maybe even just build up. Actually, that's not true. Our goal here is to build up a critical mass of characters to quest and beat him. All we need is 4. So for every character we draw, we put that in play and pass the turn. This does leave us very, very vulnerable to Grab Your Swords, which they have found. Okay, so now I have to quest with Flynn. If they choose, and they do choose to sing Grab Your Swords, which is, I think, the smart play. They choose to use Tinkerbell to sing Grab Your Swords to make sure that I don't build up a critical mass of potentially game-breaking characters. Now we're back up to 3, pass the turn. They are going to be forced to deal with whatever character I play so that I don't reach the ability to quest for 4 lore the following turn. Effectively, the race is on and we are trying to match advantage to advantage. They had another Grab Your Swords. That is an incredibly powerful draw from them. We've been set back in pretty heavy ways. They're questing for 5 every turn. Potentially pretty devastating. Okay, Cheshire Cat is out. We just need another, with, let's see, 44 cards in deck. They don't have any more grab your swords. They very likely have a smash. Very good draw for them. And they continue to quest. This is the strength of Steel Song, is having the removal to deal with whatever else is brought into play. Next turn, they'll be able to quest for 6 unless I'm able to deal with these cards. I don't think I'll be able to. Let's see what we draw. I mean, with this one, we can draw, I think, a Stitch, but that's not going to do anything for us because that allows us to actually play Stitch with Grab Your Swords. They are going to be able to quest and win this round, which is a pretty solid game to get to 16. Just good for them for having the removal in hand to be able to deal with the threats that came onto the board, which is one of the weaknesses of an aggressive deck, is if you don't have the quick and fast early plays, sometimes it comes down to you being defeated by their removal. It's totally fair and it happens. All right, we are in for another round. Let's see if we can get a win here. And regardless, we are going to take a moment to review the deck, see how it felt, review any potential changes that we make, perhaps discuss any of the misplays that might have occurred, and then see where we can go from here. Oh, wow, what an interesting draw we have. I actually don't know what I would like to throw back here. I think we throw back these 2 cards. I want to keep Be Our Guest to potentially draw something down the road. Lilo is a solid opening turn. We can protect Lilo with Simba the next turn should we need to. Tinkerbell's good, and Stitch is just going to be used for early ink. I just simply have Stitch here for early ink and Tinkerbell for early ink if needed. Okay, guaranteeing we can get early ink, guaranteeing we can have Recurrence. Pretty solid opening hand. I'll take it. Let's see what they're playing though. Putting a Stitch away, interesting. So we know, putting a Stitch away with no other opening play is an interesting turn. I'm going to put Stitch away, then play a Lilo. Let's see what happens at turn 2 here. We know they're Amber, don't know the secondary color. Amber and Amethyst. I'm intrigued by this. I like this quite a bit. Okay, we quest here anyway. We're going to play Duke of Wesselton and then bring in Simba at the bodyguard. He's going to come in exerted. So that way, if Dr. Facilier does challenge, they must challenge Simba first. They're going to ink Simba. For 3, play Maleficent, probably one of the best cards in the game. 3 cost. That allows you to draw a card with 2 attack and 2 defense. Quest for 1. Very, very solid card. I love that Maleficent card. Okay, it exerts. A-okay by me. We are going to use Simba to sing Be Our Guest. I believe the play here is to draw Cheshire Cat so that we stay on curve. We have Tinkerbell, which is fine. Hans is inarguably the better 3-drop. We are going to play Tinkerbell here, put Cheshire Cat in play, and quest with Lilo up to 4. Both of these cards are going to be traded. That's just fine. If they are doing this the right way, Maleficent will attack into Simba, Dr. Facilier will attack into Lilo. A-okay by me. Oh, another Dr. Facilier. Interesting. I wonder if they are going to be able to shift. I'm intrigued by that play, but I think that's fine. And they have the 1-cost Maleficent. How interesting. How very, very interesting. Okay, let's think about the correct play to make here. We are going to play Mad Hatter. We are going to play a Hans, and I don't think we attack. I think we see what they do. Amber and Amethyst, they don't have a lot of removal in their decks as it is. So I'm just curious to see if they are going to quest for 4 lore. I can quest for 5 next turn, and frankly, if I quest, they will be able to trade out Cheshire Cat in a way that I don't really believe is favorable, or secondarily, I can force them to try to trade out Cheshire Cat. That's another potential. I force them to try to trade out Cheshire Cat. They begin to feel comfortable, and they might attack with Maleficent, or they might, quest with Maleficent next turn. I could trade that out with Hans, and then be able to draw a card with Rapunzel. Although that seems to be a bit of a gamble that I don't know if I'm willing to take. I'm guaranteeing I lose 1 card for their 1. They don't quest with either of these 2 cards, but those frankly aren't the cards I'm worried about. If they quest for 4, that's fine. I think we just pass the turn here. Attacking with Cheshire Cat, questing with Cheshire Cat feels like a gamble that I don't want to take without knowing exactly what's coming. Okay. Questing with all 3 likely has a Simba Protective Cub to come into play. They've already inked 2 Simba Protective Cubs. They need something with... I'm very intrigued by this decision. Okay, here's my thought. I want to get value out of Rapunzel, and I also want to quest with Hans specifically. But is it worth it to me? You know what? I think it is. We are going to attack Cheshire Cat into Maleficent. We are then going to draw 2 cards with Rapunzel. Perfect. We are going to ink a Mad Hatter, and then we quest with Hans. They will trade out Hans, and I think that's fine. I have Hades to get Hans back if I so wish. But for now, we pass the turn. At this point, I'm running through my head at what 5 cost exists between Amethyst and Emerald. We We have a Lantern to lower the cost of any of the other cards that might come into play. They can quest for 6 each turn. I can quest for 7. I'm ahead in the races. I can still potentially beat them there if I so wish. I wonder if their priority is going to be to simply quest to try to race. It seems that that is the case. Play a 4-cost Mickey Mouse. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. They can quest for 8 each turn. The play here for me, I believe, team, is to play quest. Then we play a Maximus at his bodyguard state, so they have to swing into Maximus. They have to take care of Maximus this coming turn, and then they have to eliminate one of my other characters in order to be able to not lose the game next turn. So I'm curious to see what their play is going to be. Dr. Facilier goes through and is eliminated. Okay. Maleficent is eliminated. And then likely Rapunzel goes in. Oh, Mickey Mouse is the trade. They're trying to save their high lore questing, but I would have used Rapunzel there if it had been me. And then they concede the game. That's interesting. Not normally how I'd like to see the game ended through a concession. I think playing that out, but I think that there was a misplay on their part by utilizing Mickey Mouse as the final trade with Maximus as opposed to Rapunzel or even Maleficent. But I think Rapunzel would have been the optimal play there. And we're able to achieve victory. That doesn't take us through the end game, but we are able to achieve victory with our Amber Emerald Aggression deck. So let's do a recap. Overall, I think this is a really fun deck to play. It's enjoyable. Aggressive decks have never necessarily been my style of deck or style of play. I find myself on the control side of the house, which means that there are likely some plays that I'm making that are misplays. I'm curious to hear from you all what they are and your thoughts down below. It's interesting because when you have the deck isolated and when you understand what you're playing against, you're able to control the flow of the game by applying a lot of early pressure, which means that your opponent is more likely to misplay because they are desperately trying to remove resources from your side of the board. I think that this Amber and Emerald combination benefits and thrives off of having a lot of characters in play. I'm curious to see in future sets if there are ways to sort of lower the curve and continue to bring down the ink cost for this deck to be able to maximize value, but overall I think it's very solid. Do I think that this build and the build that I have created is the most optimal build? Likely no. But I think it's a pretty good start for the blueprint of an Amber and Emerald deck, and I'm curious to see where you take it. But until next time, friends, it's been fun bringing you this. I hope you've enjoyed the gameplay. If you have any thoughts about what you saw, any things that you might change, any misplays that I made, I'm sure I made misplays. I'm not perfect, and I will continue to make misplays, but that's part of the joy of learning this game together, is we're able to communicate in a respectful and healthy way to find out how to play the game better together. So just let me know in the comments down below if there's a specific deck you'd like to see me build or play, or a color combination that you'd like to see me build or play. Let me know down below as well. Be sure to like the video, subscribe if you are new. I very much appreciate you. And as always, friends, I'm Alan, and it's been a blast. Thanks for hanging out.